Good evening, and welcome. Tonight, we are going to travel back in time, more than 700 years, to a small farming village in medieval England. There is nothing you need to do, and nowhere you need to be. If you drift off to sleep somewhere along the way, that is perfectly fine. That is what this story is for. So settle in, let your shoulders sink into the bed, and let the modern world grow quiet behind you. The year is 1320. The place is a village we will call Alderton, though it could be almost any village in England at that time. It sits in a shallow green valley, beside a slow brown stream, surrounded on all sides by open fields that stretch away toward the woods. Perhaps 30 families live here. No one in Alderton has ever seen a map of England. Most of them will never travel more than a day's walk from the place where they were born. Their whole world is this valley, these fields, this sky. It is late October, and the sun is going down. The light is low and golden, slanting across the stubble of the harvested fields, catching the smoke that rises from the rooftops. Each house sends up its own thin ribbon of smoke, pale grey against the darkening sky, because each house has a fire burning at its heart, and that fire almost never goes out. The houses themselves are long and low, built of timber frames filled in with woven branches and daubed with a mixture of clay, straw, and earth. Their roofs are thick thatch, golden when new, grey-brown with age and weather. There are no chimneys. The smoke from each hearth simply rises into the dark space beneath the roof and finds its way out through the thatch, so that on a still evening the whole village seems to smoulder gently, like something warm and alive. Down the single muddy street, the day is winding to its close. A woman carries a wooden bucket of water up from the stream, walking slowly, her breath beginning to show in the cooling air. A man leads 2 oxen back from the fields, their great heads swaying, their hooves pressing deep, patient prints into the mud. Somewhere a dog barks twice, then thinks better of it. Chickens mutter and settle along the fences. Geese file through a gateway one by one, in single file, as if they had rehearsed it. The people of Alderton have been awake since first light, as they are every day, because daylight is the only light that costs nothing. Candles of beeswax are for the church and for the manor house. A peasant family lights its evening with the fire itself, and sometimes with rushlights, which are dried rushes peeled and dipped in animal fat, giving a small, soft, smoky flame that lasts perhaps half an hour. So when the sun goes down, the village does not fight the darkness for long. It yields to it, gratefully, the way you are beginning to yield to the weight of your own eyelids. From the small stone church at the end of the street, a bell begins to ring. It is not urgent. Nothing in Alderton is urgent tonight. The bell is ringing the curfew, from the French words couvre-feu, meaning cover the fire. It is a reminder to every household to bank their hearth for the night, to rake the ashes over the glowing coals so that no stray spark can escape while the village sleeps, and so that in the morning, buried deep in the grey ash, a living ember will still be waiting, ready to be coaxed back into flame. Listen to that bell for a moment. 8 slow strokes, rolling out over the rooftops, over the fields, fading into the woods. Every person in the valley hears it, and to every one of them it means the same thing. The day is finished. The work is done. There is nothing more that can be asked of anyone until morning. And that, perhaps, is the strangest and most restful thing about this world we are visiting tonight. There is no clock in Alderton. No one here has ever seen one. Time is measured in bells and in daylight, in seasons and in saints' days. When darkness comes, time itself grows soft and unhurried. The night is not something to be filled. It is simply something to be rested through, long and dark and quiet. So let us walk down this street together, past the last of the smoke and the settling animals, toward one particular house, where a fire is being banked and a family is gathering. We are going to spend the whole of this long autumn night with them, and the seasons of their year, and nothing bad is going to happen. There will be no alarms and no surprises. Only the slow, ordinary, patient rhythm of a world that went to bed with the sun. Take a slow breath, and let it out gently. The evening air smells of wood smoke and damp earth and cut straw. The first star is out above the church tower. The bell has stopped ringing now, and the quiet that follows it is deeper than any quiet you have heard. The house we are entering belongs to a man named John, his wife Matilda, their 3 children, and, at the far end of the building, behind a low wooden partition, their 2 oxen, a cow, and a handful of sheep. This is a longhouse, and it is exactly what its name suggests, one long room under one long roof, people at one end, animals at the other. To modern ears, sharing a roof with cattle might sound strange. But on an October night, with the frosts coming, every creature in this building is glad of the arrangement. The animals are safe from wolves and thieves. The family is warmed by the slow, patient heat of the beasts, which drifts up the length of the house like breath. And in the depths of winter, when ice grows on the inside of the walls, that warmth can mean the difference between a hard night and a dangerous one. Step inside, and let your eyes adjust. The only light is the fire, burning low in an open hearth in the middle of the floor. There is no fireplace, no chimney, just a ring of flat stones on the packed earth, and above it, hanging from a beam on an iron chain, a heavy round-bellied pot. The smoke rises past the pot, up into the darkness under the thatch, where hams and bunches of herbs hang in the rafters, slowly curing in the smoky air, season after season. The floor beneath your feet is earth, beaten hard by generations of footsteps, and strewn with rushes cut from the stream bank. Fresh rushes smell green and faintly sweet. Matilda changes them when they grow stale, and sprinkles them in summer with meadowsweet, a flower whose name remembers that very custom. Along the wall stand the family's possessions, and they are few enough to name. A trestle table, 2 benches, a great wooden chest that holds the good cloak, the Sunday linen, and a small bag of silver pennies buried under everything else. Wooden bowls and spoons on a shelf. A butter churn. Sacks of grain raised off the floor on planks, away from the damp and the mice. And in the corner, the bed. The bed is the most valuable thing the family owns, after the animals. It is a wooden frame strung with ropes, and on the ropes lies a mattress stuffed with straw and heather. Over that, woolen blankets, woven by Matilda from the wool of their own sheep, and on the coldest nights, sheepskins over everything. The whole family sleeps in and around this one bed, the children tucked between their parents or curled on straw pallets nearby, because warmth, in this world, is something you share. Supper tonight is what supper is almost every night, pottage. In the great pot over the fire, a thick stew has been simmering all afternoon. Barley and oats, dried peas and beans, onions and leeks and cabbage from the garden plot behind the house, flavored with a small piece of salted bacon and a handful of herbs. It is eaten with dark bread, made of rye and barley, dense and heavy and satisfying, baked in the village oven earlier this week. To drink, there is ale, brewed by Matilda herself from barley malt, thick and mild and slightly sweet. Everyone drinks it, children included, for it is nourishing, and it keeps better than water. The family eats slowly, by firelight, mostly in silence, the good silence of tired people who have worked all day in the open air and have nothing left to prove to anyone. The spoons are wood. The bowls are wood. The table is scrubbed smooth with sand and years. When the meal is done, the bowls are wiped clean with the last of the bread, and the youngest child is already asleep against her mother's side, and no one sees any reason to wake her. Now John rises, stiff in the knees, and goes to the hearth to perform the last task of every day. With a wooden rake he draws the grey ash up and over the red coals, covering the fire the way you might tuck a blanket around a sleeping child. Buried like this, starved of air but never quite extinguished, the embers will smoulder gently until morning. Some households keep a fire in this way for years without ever letting it die. There are hearths in this valley, people say, that have not gone cold in living memory. The rushlight is pinched out. The darkness comes up around the family like deep water, warm and total. Through the partition you can hear the oxen shifting their weight, the slow grind of a cow chewing her cud, the small rustlings of the sheep settling into the straw. The animals breathe, and the people breathe, and the banked fire ticks softly to itself under its blanket of ash, and the wind moves over the thatch above them all. And if you were to lie down there among them, on the straw mattress under the woolen blankets, you would feel what they feel every night of their lives, that the day is truly over, that everyone and everything is gathered in and accounted for, and that the long dark hours ahead ask nothing of you at all. Nothing but rest. Let us drift back a few weeks now, to the golden end of September, because to understand why the village sleeps so soundly tonight, you have to understand what autumn means here. Autumn is the season of gathering in. Everything that will keep the family alive through the winter must be found, cut, dried, salted, smoked, or stored before the cold arrives, and there is a deep, bone-level satisfaction in watching the stores fill up, shelf by shelf and sack by sack. The harvest itself came first, back in August, in the long hot days the villagers call the busiest of the year. Every man, woman, and child of Alderton was out in the great open fields from dawn until dusk, moving in slow lines through the wheat and barley and rye. The men swung scythes and sickles in long, rhythmic strokes, a pace you could keep for hours, unhurried and steady, like rowing. Behind them the women and children gathered the cut stalks and bound them into sheaves, and stood the sheaves together in little leaning clusters called stooks, so that the wind could dry them. For those weeks, the whole valley worked as a single creature, and even the lord of the manor's own fields were cut by the villagers' hands, for that labour is part of the rent they owe for their land. When the last cart of grain creaked up the lane to the barns, the village celebrated harvest home, with the best ale of the year and roast meat and songs in the churchyard. And then, without hurry, the quieter work of autumn began. In the garden plots behind each house, the cabbages and leeks and onions are lifted and brought in. Onions are braided into long ropes and hung from the rafters. Peas and beans, already dried gold and rattling in their pods, are shelled by the fireside in the evenings, the children shelling alongside their parents, everyone's hands busy and everyone's mind at ease, the dry seeds hissing softly into wooden bowls, a sound like gentle rain. In the woods beyond the fields, the pigs are having the finest weeks of their year. Every family sends its pigs to the woodland in autumn, under the eye of a swineherd, to feast on the fallen acorns and beechnuts. This rite even has its own old name, pannage. The pigs grow round and heavy in the dappled shade, and the sound of them, the contented rooting and snuffling among the dry leaves, drifts back toward the village on the afternoon breeze. The villagers go to the woods too. They gather hazelnuts and crab apples, sloes and blackberries, and mushrooms from the deep leaf mold. They cut and stack firewood, oak and ash and beech, enough to feed 30 hearths through the dark months, and the steady, distant knock of the woodcutter's axe becomes the heartbeat of the season. By ancient custom they may take fallen branches freely, whatever can be reached by hook or by crook, and nothing is wasted, not a twig, not an acorn, not an hour of the shortening daylight. In November comes the quiet, sober day the old calendars call blood month, when the family looks at its hay and its grain and decides how many animals can be fed through the winter. The pig, fattened on acorns, is butchered, and for once nothing about the day is sad to the family, because this is the whole purpose for which the pig was raised, and not one part of it will be wasted. The meat is rubbed with precious salt and packed in barrels, or hung in the chimney smoke to cure into bacon and ham. Sausages are made, and puddings, and the fat is saved for rushlights and for cooking, and for a few days the whole village eats fresh meat and feels rich. And so, by the time the October night we first visited comes around, the longhouse is a fortress of small comforts. Grain in the raised sacks. Onions in ropes overhead. Peas and beans in jars. Bacon in the smoke. Firewood stacked against the south wall, taller than John himself. Ale in the barrel and honey in a pot and apples laid out in the loft, not one of them touching its neighbor, so the whole loft smells faintly sweet. Matilda knows every item of these stores the way you know the rooms of your own home. On the edge of sleep, she can walk through them in her mind, counting, and the counting always comes out right. It is the oldest lullaby in the world, we have enough. The winter can come now. We are ready. Come back now to the October night, and lie still in the darkness of the longhouse, and listen. The darkness here is complete in a way that almost no one alive today has ever known. No streetlight, no glow on the horizon, no light at all but the faint red seam of the banked fire under its ash. On a cloudy night you cannot see your own hand. And in that perfect darkness, the world becomes a world of sounds, every one of them known, every one of them accounted for. Closest of all is the family itself. The slow breathing of the children, each at their own pace, like small overlapping tides. The straw mattress creaking as someone turns. The dog by the hearth, sighing hugely and resettling, chasing something easy in a dream. Beyond the partition, the animals. The oxen breathe long and deep, like bellows worked slowly. The cow chews her cud in the dark, a patient, grinding rhythm that stops, and starts again, all night long. The sheep rustle the straw. A hen, high on the roost beam, mutters once in her sleep and is quiet. There is no sound in the world more reassuring to a farmer than these sounds. They mean that everything he owns is alive, and warm, and exactly where it should be. The house itself speaks too. The wind moves over the thatch with a sound like a long, soft breath, and the old timber frame answers it, creaking gently, joints that have been settling into one another since John's grandfather was young. Rain, when it comes, does not drum on this roof as it drums on hard modern roofs. A foot of thatch swallows the sound, so the rain is only a hush upon a hush, the gentlest sound there is, and the family sleeps deeper for it. Outside, the village night has its wanderers. A fox crosses the empty street, delicate and silent, pausing at the smell of the hen house, finding it shut fast as always, moving on. An owl calls from the church tower, one long wavering note, and another owl answers from the woods, marking out their kingdoms. Mice go about their small business in the eaves. Down by the stream, the water talks quietly to itself over the stones, as it has done since before the village had a name, as it will do long after. And in the middle of the night, something happens that would seem strange to a modern sleeper, though it is the most natural thing in the world here. The family wakes. Not suddenly, and not to any alarm, but softly, the way a cork rises through water. In an age when the night is 14 hours long, people do not always sleep it through in one piece. They speak of first sleep and second sleep, two deep rests with a quiet island of waking in between. In that waking hour, nothing is required of anyone. John lies still and listens to the rain and does his slow arithmetic of comfort, the grain in the sacks, the wood against the wall, the bacon in the smoke. Matilda murmurs a prayer, an old one, the words worn smooth as river stones from use. The children do not wake at all, or half wake, and burrow deeper into the warmth between their parents. Perhaps a few words are exchanged, in voices too low to carry. Perhaps the fire is given one small log. And then, one by one, the family slips under again into second sleep, the deepest sleep of the night, the one that carries them all the way to the grey light of morning. There is a lesson in their night, if you would like one, though you are welcome to be asleep by now and miss it entirely. The lesson is that waking in the dark is not a failure and not an emergency. It is only an island, and the warm sea of sleep is all around it, and you have nothing to do but slip back in. The oxen are breathing. The rain is hushing on the thatch. The fire is safe under its ash. Everything is accounted for. Let yourself sink. The weeks turn, and the year leans down into December, and now the true cold comes to the valley. The stream grows a lace of ice along its edges. The mud of the street freezes into hard ridges that hold the shape of every footprint and every wheel. The days shrink until the sun barely climbs over the southern hills before it begins to slide down again, and the nights stretch out to 15 hours and more. And yet, inside the longhouse, the family is not afraid of winter. They respect it, the way sailors respect the sea, but they have been preparing for it all year, and they meet it with 100 small skills that no one ever wrote down, passed from mother to daughter and father to son since before anyone can remember. The first skill is the fire. In winter the hearth is never allowed to burn low in the evening. John builds it carefully, seasoned oak at the heart of it, because oak burns long and steady, and the family draws its benches close. The fire is kept modest, all the same. Wood must last until April, and a wise householder burns like a miser and banks the coals deep. The second skill is the animals, for winter is the season when the wisdom of the longhouse reveals itself completely. The beasts at the east end of the building are a living stove. 2 oxen, a cow, and 6 sheep give off, together, the warmth of a good fire, hour after hour, all night long, and they ask nothing for it but hay. On the bitterest nights, when the wind comes out of the northeast with snow on its breath, the partition between people and animals matters less and less, and the youngest lambs, born too early, are brought to sleep by the hearth itself, folded in sacking, and the children argue drowsily over who gets to hold them. The third skill is the bed. In winter the straw mattress is piled with every covering the family owns, the woolen blankets, the sheepskins with the fleece turned inward, the good cloak spread on top. Underneath, the mattress is stuffed fresh and deep. The family sleeps close, the children in the middle, where the warmth of 2 grown bodies meets. Nobody in this world sleeps alone in winter, and nobody thinks anything of it, except that it is warm, and warmth is happiness. Matilda has her own winter arts. A flat stone warmed at the edge of the fire through the evening, wrapped in cloth and laid at the foot of the bed an hour before sleep. Hot pottage in the belly, because a fed body is a warm body, and supper in winter is served late for exactly that reason. Ale warmed by the fire with a little honey. Feet dried and rubbed before bed, always, because wet feet in winter are the beginning of every misfortune. Outside, the frost does its slow silver work. It creeps across the thatch and stiffens it. It seals the shutters with a fine white seam. On the coldest nights of all, the villagers say the trees themselves crack like whips in the woods, the sap freezing in their veins, a sound that carries for a mile through air gone perfectly still. The stars on such nights are terrible and beautiful, thick as spilled salt, and the breath of the oxen rises through the roof vents in 2 slow plumes, like the house itself breathing. But under the blankets, in the huddled dark, the family is warm. Not the thin, even warmth of a heated room, but a deep animal warmth, earned and shared, wool and straw and kin and cattle all together holding the cold at arm's length until morning. The winter night is long, but it is only long. It is not empty. It is full of breathing. And when the family wakes between first and second sleep, in the black heart of a January night, and hears the wind trying the shutters, the feeling in the house is not fear. It is something closer to victory, quiet and unspoken. The stores are holding. The fire is banked. The beasts are warm. Let the wind try the shutters. The shutters are good, and John made them himself, and everyone inside this house is going back to sleep. Somewhere in the drowsy middle of these long nights, it is worth telling the story of the one thing that anchors every single day of this world, the thing the whole village is organized around, and that is bread, and the good brown business of making it. The grain that fills the sacks in the longhouse is mostly barley and rye, with oats for the pottage and the animals, and a little wheat in the best years, though fine white wheat bread is for the manor and the priest, and the villagers do not miss it much, having their own. Rye and barley bake into a dense, dark, honest loaf, called marslin when the grains are mixed, a bread with weight in the hand and a long, sweet, sour flavor, a bread that a working body leans on the way a wall leans on its foundations. But between the sack and the loaf lie 2 journeys, and both of them belong to the rhythm of village life. The first journey is to the mill. Down at the bend of the stream stands the water mill, timber-framed and mossy-roofed, and inside it 2 great millstones turn with a sound like patient thunder, a deep, continuous, stony rumble that the miller's family stops hearing after their first year and sleeps through ever after. The mill belongs to the Lord, and every family must grind its grain there and leave a portion as the fee, and every family grumbles about this quietly and pays it anyway, and the grumbling is as much a part of the custom as the toll. Going to the mill is an errand with waiting built into it, and the waiting is half the point. Sacks are heaved, the wheel turns, the water pours, and the men of the village stand about in the cool grain-smelling dimness exchanging the news of the fields at the speed of falling water. No one hurries at the mill. The stones cannot be argued with. The flour comes when it comes, soft and warm and grey-gold, smelling like the inside of a nut. The second journey is to the oven. Most houses have no oven of their own, for an oven is a hungry thing to heat, so the village shares one, a great domed communal oven near the green. On baking days, once or twice a week, it is fired with bundles of brushwood until the dome glows, then raked clean, and the women come from every house with their rounds of risen dough on wooden boards, each loaf marked with the family's own sign, a cross, a crescent, 3 small cuts, so that every household gets back its own. And then the smell. There may be no better smell in the entire medieval world, and it belongs to everyone equally, drifting out over the green, through the gates, along the street, the smell of 40 loaves baking together, rye and barley turning gold-black in the dark heat. Children find excuses to be near the oven on baking days. So do the dogs. So, if he is honest, does the priest. The loaves come home wrapped in cloth, still warm at the heart of them, and they are stored on a shelf too high for mice and eaten across the days that follow, and even the eating is orderly. Yesterday's bread is for eating. Older bread is for the pottage, dropped in to thicken it. The oldest bread of all, cut into thick, stale slices called trenchers, serves as the plates themselves at table, soaking up the gravy of the meal, after which the trencher too is eaten, or given to the dog, or handed out the door to someone poorer, and so not even the plate is ever wasted. Bread is so much the measure of life here that the villagers count wealth in it, luck in it, the year in it. A good year is a year of full sacks. Grace is said over bread and never skipped. And when Matilda, on the edge of sleep, does her nightly counting of the stores, the sacks of grain are always where the counting begins, because grain is bread and bread is days, and she can feel, without opening her eyes, exactly how many quiet days are stacked up in the corner of the house, waiting to be lived. So tonight, in the dark, that arithmetic is done again, slower each time. Sacks in the corner. Flour in the crock. Loaves on the shelf, one already begun. The oven will be fired again in 3 days. The mill will grumble and pay out its soft grey gold. The bread will come. The bread has always come. Sleep now. The bread will come. Slowly, the great wheel of the year turns, and the light begins to come back. In February, which the village calendar brightens with the candles of Candlemas, the days are visibly longer, and the first lambs arrive in the cold, wet fields, unsteady and astonishing. By March, the earth has thawed and dried just enough, and there comes a morning, known by smell and by instinct rather than by any date, when John walks out, crumbles a fistful of soil between his fingers, looks at the sky, and decides, today, we plough. Ploughing is the great labor of spring, and it is slow in the way that all the best sleep-time stories are slow. The plough itself is a heavy wooden thing shod with iron, and it is dragged by oxen, walking at an ox's pace, which is the pace of the world here, somewhere just below 2 miles in an hour. John guides the plough. His eldest son walks at the head of the team with a long light rod, talking to the oxen, encouraging them by name, Brownie and Merrylegs, names that oxen have carried in this valley for 100 years. And slowly, one furrow at a time, up the long strip and down again, the pale winter field turns over into ridges of dark, wet, glistening earth. Behind the plough come the birds. Gulls come inland from the coast, and rooks and starlings, wheeling and dropping and squabbling over the turned worms, a white and black snowfall of birds that follows the plough all day at a respectful distance. The air smells of rain and cut earth, the deepest, oldest smell there is. A furrow can be crooked, and John's never are, and that is a quiet pride he will carry all his life, that a man could stand at the top of any field he has ploughed and look down furrows straight as harp strings. The fields themselves are unlike anything a modern eye would expect. There are no hedged little paddocks here. Around the village lie 2 or 3 enormous open fields, and each family farms long thin strips scattered through them, an acre here, half an acre there, everyone's strips lying side by side with everyone else's, so that no family gets all the best land or all the worst land, and every year one entire field is left fallow, to rest and be grazed and recover its strength. It is a system of almost monastic patience, agreed and adjusted at village meetings since time out of mind, and it means that no one ploughs alone, and no one harvests alone, and the whole valley works to one calendar, like a single slow instrument. After the plough comes the sowing, and sowing is a walking meditation. A canvas seed lip slung at the hip, filled with seed barley. A stride, a swing of the arm, a broadcast arc of seed catching the light like thrown water. Stride, swing, cast. Stride, swing, cast. A man sows several acres in a day like this, thinking of everything and nothing, and behind him come the children with clappers and slings to discourage the boldest of the rooks, and behind the children comes the harrow to comb the seed into the soil, and behind the harrow, in its own time, comes the rain. And then, for a little while, the strangest thing in the farming year happens, nothing. The seed is in the ground, and the ground is in charge now. There is weeding to do, and ditches to clear, and lambs to watch, but the great work of spring is finished, and the village draws breath. In the lengthening evenings, people stand at their gates again. The green mist of new barley spreads across the dark fields, visible first only out of the corner of the eye, then unmistakable, then everywhere. John walks the strips at dusk, as every farmer in every age has walked, not because the barley needs him, but because looking at it is a kind of happiness. The rows are coming up straight. The rain has been kind. The oxen are turned out to grass and growing sleek. On such an evening even a careful man permits himself to think that the year has begun well. And that thought, the year has begun well, is the one he carries to bed with him through the pale spring twilight, when the blackbirds sing so late in the thorn trees that the children fall asleep to them through the open shutter, and the fire can be banked early and small, and the night is mild, and the whole turned, planted, breathing valley settles down softly in the dark to grow. Then comes summer, and summer in the medieval village is not a holiday. It is the season of the longest work. But it is beloved anyway, deeply and simply, because it is warm, and it is bright, and everything that was planned and planted and prayed over is now coming to be, in the fullness of the light. The days themselves stretch to 16 hours. The village rises at 4 with the sun and rests in the sharp heat of midday, dozing in the shade of the hedgerows like cats, and works again in the long gold of the evening. And the first great labor of the season is hay. The hay meadow is cut in late June, in a week chosen by watching the sky like sailors, for hay wants sun. The mowers move through the deep grass in a staggered line, scythes hissing, each man a pace behind the man to his right, and the grass falls in long overlapping rows with a sound like the sea drawing back. Haymaking is the sweetest smelling work of the year. Cut grass in the sun smells green at first, then, as it cures, warmer and softer, until the whole valley smells like summer itself. Everyone turns the hay. Women and children with long wooden rakes, tossing and spreading it to dry, and the days of hay turning are, if truth be told, half work and half festival, with ale brought out to the meadow in stone jugs cooled in the stream, and bread and cheese eaten sitting in the shorn rows, and the smallest children burrowing in the haycocks until they fall asleep in them and must be looked for at dusk, and are always found, hot-cheeked and hay-scattered and cross at being woken. When it is dry, the hay comes home in high, swaying cartloads and is built into stacks, thatched on top like little houses, and John builds his stacks the way he ploughs, precisely, with pride. The hay is the winter warmth of the oxen and the cow and the sheep. Every load safely stacked is another month of breathing animal heat at the east end of the longhouse in January. Summer, in this world, is where winter's comfort is manufactured. Beyond the hay, summer is a long, glowing procession of steady tasks. The sheep are washed in the stream, protesting, and then sheared, and the fleece is rolled and sacked for Matilda's spinning, which will fill the firelit evenings of the whole coming winter. The garden swells with beans and wurts and young onions. Bees hum in the skeps at the garden's end, laying up honey that will sweeten the dark months. The weeds are hoed out of the barley, thistle by thistle. The ditches are cleared, the harness mended, the church roof patched, and on Midsummer Eve the whole village stays up shamelessly late around a bonfire on the green, and there is dancing, and the old people say the fires were burning on that hill before the church ever came, and the priest eats his roasted beans by the blaze like everyone else. And through it all, the barley ripens. It goes from green to grey-green, from grey-green to gold, and in the last weeks of July the whole valley stands still and heavy under the sun, one enormous slow breath before the harvest, the field so full and so quiet you can hear the grain tick and rustle as it dries, a sound like the softest rain, a sound like the year itself whispering, nearly, nearly, nearly. The nights of high summer are short and warm and shallow, and the village sleeps through them lightly, with the shutters open. At 10 in the evening there is still a green light in the western sky. At 3 in the morning the first birds are already talking. In between lies a soft, brief darkness that smells of hay and honeysuckle and warm thatch, and the sleepers turn in it easily, half hearing the corncrake rasping out in the meadow, the softest, most rhythmic, most sleep-soaked sound of the medieval summer, saying over and over, like a blessing on the whole valley, "Rest now, rest now, rest now." We have followed the village through its seasons, and now, as the story begins to slow and settle, let us speak of the gentlest machinery of this world, the way it keeps time without clocks, and the way it rests. Time in Alderton is kept by the church, and the church keeps it with bells. The small stone tower at the end of the street rings the canonical hours, the old monastic divisions of the day, and though no villager could recite them all, every villager's body knows them. The dawn bell, when the fires are uncovered and the animals fed. The midday bell, when workers in the far strips straighten their backs, shade their eyes, and unwrap their bread and cheese in the shadow of the hedge. The evening bell, the curfew, when the fires are covered again and the day is folded up and put away. Between the bells, time is told by the sun, by shadows, by hunger, by the behavior of animals. A villager asked to meet you will not say an hour. He will say, after milking, or when the dew is off the grass, and both of you will arrive within minutes of one another, and neither will think anything of it. And woven through the year, thick as threads in cloth, are the holy days. This is perhaps the kindest surprise of the medieval calendar, it is full of rest. Every Sunday, all year long, heavy work is forbidden, and the village walks to church together and stands in the cool candle-smelling dimness under the one painted ceiling any of them will ever see, and afterward there is the churchyard, which is the true parliament of the village, where marriages are hinted at, bargains are struck, and the news of the whole valley is traded at leisure. And besides the Sundays there are the feasts, dozens of them across the year, saints' days and holy days on which the plough stands idle. Christmas alone is 12 days long, 12 days in the deep of winter when almost nothing is asked of anyone beyond feeding the beasts, and the lord of the manor, by old custom, feasts his tenants in his own hall, and the longhouse evenings fill with games and songs and the slow, extravagant burning of the great Yule log. Some years, the reckoning says, a villager rests 1 day in every 3. It does not feel like idleness to them, and it is not. It is the rhythm the whole world runs on, work and rest, fast and feast, as regular as breathing, as regular as the bells. No one in Alderton has ever heard of a weekend, and no one has ever needed one. Rest is not something they wait for. It is stitched into the year itself, arriving on its own schedule, as certain as the seasons. There is one more feast to speak of, because the village is dreaming of it already on our October night, and that is Christmas. In the darkest week of the year, when the sun seems barely to rise at all, the church fills with candles, real beeswax candles, dozens of them, the greatest blaze of light the village ever sees. And the villagers stand together in that golden light with the winter locked outside the door, and they sing. The old ones, the children, the shepherds with their cracked voices, everyone. And whatever else the year has brought, in that hour the valley is as warm and as bright as it will ever be, and every person in it is exactly where their fathers and mothers stood, singing the same words in the same light, and time itself seems, for a little while, to lie down and rest. That is the shape of time here. Not a line, hurrying somewhere. A wheel, turning slowly in place, year after year, bell after bell, feast after feast. Nothing is rushing toward anything. Everything is returning. And to a mind preparing for sleep, there may be no gentler thought than that one, that tomorrow will be shaped like today, and next year will be shaped like this one, and the bells will ring the same hours, and the bread will bake on the same days, world without end. Amen. And so we come back, at the end of all our seasons, to where we began, the village at dusk, the smoke rising from the rooftops, the curfew bell rolling its 8 slow strokes out over the valley. But now you know everything the bell is speaking to. You know the longhouse and the banked fire sleeping under its ash. You know the sacks of grain in the corner and the onions braided in the rafters and the bacon curing in the smoke. You know the oxen breathing beyond the partition, browny and merrylegs, warm as stoves, and the straight furrows resting under the frost, and the hay standing thatched in its stacks, and the seed barley waiting in the dark for spring. The village is going to sleep now, house by house. The last rushlight is pinched out. The last dog turns 3 times and settles. The fox makes his silent patrol down the empty street and finds every hen house shut, as always. The owl takes her post on the church tower. The stream goes on talking quietly to itself under the young ice, saying nothing, meaning nothing, on and on, the way it has since before the village had a name. Inside the longhouse, the family is asleep. John sleeps like a man who has ploughed straight furrows all his life. Matilda sleeps in the middle of her finished arithmetic, all the stores counted, all the counting come out right. The children sleep tangled together like puppies, growing in the dark. Even the house sleeps, in its way, the old timbers easing, the thatch pulling its grey blanket of frost up to its chin. 700 years lie between your bed and theirs. Everything about the world has changed, and nothing about this has changed, a roof against the weather, warmth against the cold, food laid up against the winter, and the people and creatures you are responsible for, gathered close, breathing slow, safe until morning. When you feel your own thoughts loosening now, sliding apart, refusing to hold their shape, that is not you failing at anything. That is you arriving at the oldest place there is, the place the whole village has already gone. So let the last pictures come and go as they please. The red seam of fire under the ash. The plume of the oxen's breath rising through the roof vents into the starlight. The stook standing in the August fields. The seed leaving the sower's hand in a bright arc. The candles at Christmas. The rain hushing on the thatch, a hush upon a hush upon a hush. The bell has finished ringing. The fires are covered. Everything is accounted for, and everyone is home, and nothing more can be asked of anyone until morning. The night is long, but it is only long. It is not empty. It is full of breathing. Sleep now. The village is sleeping. Sleep now.